All right. I have been in this room for a lot of sessions, and doesn't that look like a giant Tetris board to you? Yeah, that's how I play it usually. So if you turn those down, you'll clear out the bottom line. I'm really excited to obviously talk to you today about my favorite thing, and as Lauren said, is coffee. And I was a Starbucks barista for about 5 years. And while the other people I work with, it was also their first job. And they left either to go to school or pursue another opportunity or were asked to leave. And those people that left, we would always have customers coming in and be like, where is this person? And we would always say, well, the baristas that left Starbucks promoted themselves to customer. Now, at the time, we thought we were really funny when we would say that. But now that I think about it, I can't think of a better way to encapsulate what life has been like on the other side of the counter. And I can truly say that promoting myself to customer has become more of an identity rather than a lifestyle. Think about it. I'm up here today talking to you about a job that I haven't had for over 5 years. But for example, this is what I look like when I worked at Starbucks, probably making the most perfect latte, probably connecting with that customer on the other side of the counter. It probably was their favorite experience ever, right? And this is what I look like now when I go into a store. You might laugh, and that is totally all right, but I am that person that sits on the end of the bar and watches the barista make my drink because I am paying $5 for it. The people on campus won't even go to coffee with me anymore because they know that I will always find something wrong with the way that it's done. But, nonetheless. But all kidding aside, I'm here to talk to you all today about not only what was the beauty and majesty of my 5-year tenure as a Starbucks barista, but how the mission and vision and business practices of a small coffee shop that started in Seattle, Washington can be applied to my work. And for you Dunkin' Donuts fans out there, you only have to hear about 12 more minutes of this, so we'll get through it. But before I begin, I want to answer 2 questions that I'm sure that a good amount of you are here to understand when you read the session title. The first, and I'm not sure who told you this or what barista said it or what BuzzFeed article it was on, but there is no secret menu at Starbucks. I'm really sorry to admit that, but every drink is made to order, and the next time you go and ask for something on that secret menu, you'll be just like me when I was a barista and be like, look at someone with 10 heads, like, don't know what that is. The second thing, and I hate to admit this, but I have to do it here in front of all of you in a moment of vulnerability, I did once give decaf to a rude customer. I still, after all these years, believe that customer deserved it, and they did, but I did it, and so I'm here to do that. So, all kidding aside though, I took my first ever job as a Starbucks barista in 2007. This is me with my first paycheck. I was expecting more laughter, so I appreciate the ahs in the audience. But look at that hair. I don't know how my mom let me out of the house with that. Obviously, I have a little bit less, and I think I'm wearing braces in that photo. But nonetheless, there it was. But to give you all a little bit of a reference of what I would look like now, I've brought a special guest with myself today, and I figured that I could show you all to do this presentation while wearing my Starbucks apron. Hold on just one second here. And yes, it does have my name on it because I deserve that. I started my job there to get money to go on a tour or on a trip to Europe when I was in high school. And I left when I was graduating college and on my way to graduate school. It's safe to say that Starbucks saw me grow up, and I did a lot of growing up when I worked there. This message is on the back of every Starbucks apron. This is the mission statement of the company. It's seen by more than 254,000 Starbucks baristas as they begin their work every single day. We create inspired moments in each customer's day. The next time you're at a store, I highly suggest you ask them to turn it over and show it to you, because they definitely will. But as I continued to grow in my work, I brought my notes up with me because I knew I was going to forget something, so in a moment of vulnerability, that's where I'm at. But the first thing I want you all to think about before we jump into everything is why you choose to go to Starbucks. Think about it. We have thousands of choices when it comes to our coffee every single day, and we choose Starbucks over and over, and if you're in my case, over again. And why is that? Starbucks provides a consistent experience for everyone that comes in the store. You probably don't walk into a store and not have a conversation with that friendly barista across the counter. Every time you get a drink, it tastes the same. Every time you get a pastry, it tastes the same. And if it doesn't taste right, you can go into any one of their Starbucks locations and they will remake that drink or pastry for you, no questions asked. But something that I learned as I was a Starbucks barista that was most important was how to connect with those random strangers on a daily basis. And to be honest, for the longest time, I wanted to be the CEO of Starbucks. I was going after Howard Schultz's job, but my life goals have changed slightly. But the most important lesson that I learned was how to connect with customers on a daily basis. I mean, if you look back to that photo, I was 18 in that photo, and I was connecting with people much older than me on a daily basis. And what I learned when I was there was how to connect, discover, and respond. And that's something that I'm going to take on my career journey with me all the time. I remember when I was doing a candidate presentation for a job I was looking into, and I started off by saying, the mission of Starbucks is much like the mission of student affairs. And I remember the people looking at me in the room like, Russell, student affairs is different than Starbucks. It's a multi-billion, multinational company. That's not right. And I would agree. But for just a moment, let's replace customers with students. And I think you have a very powerful picture of the work that's going on in our college universities every single day. We create inspired moments in each student's day. I'd be hard-pressed to find someone in this room who doesn't agree with that statement, or who doesn't agree with that statement, or not kind of encapsulate the work that they do on campus. But again, as I said, the thing that we learned was how to connect, discover, and respond. And that was the thing that we learned, and that was drilled into our heads on day one, is that's how you connect with customers. When you work at a location for a long time, you get to know the faces, names, and drink orders of many of the people that frequent the store. My all-time favorite customer's name was Pat. Pat would come into the store every single night and get the same drink, a tall, 5-pump, no water, chai tea latte with cinnamon sprinkles on top. And if Pat was good, we'd steam the cinnamon sprinkles in there for her. And every time she came in, we always had a very long conversation. It was about 5 or 10 minutes. We would share about each other's lives. We would talk about current events. Pat had some medical struggles she was going through. We talked about that. And in those 5 to 10 minute conversations, we got to know a lot about each other. And I think a lot about Pat because I think about how many times that she came back to the store to get the same drink over and over again. She could have gone to any Starbucks and get it. But she came back to us, and she was so proud to show her family and come in, and she would be like, oh, this is Russell, and this is what he's doing, and she was so proud to show us off. And she would even walk in and go, her family would walk in and go, we want the Pat chai. And we all knew what that was, but I didn't steam that cinnamon in that. That was only Pat. That was only that. But as I've continued throughout my work, and I started as a new professional, using this connect, discover, and respond has been has been so useful. And especially when I'm in my work, when I'm sitting across my desk from another student as they're sharing their life story. None was more difficult than the time that I responded to a student death my first year as a resident director. While it's been over 2 years since, I remember almost everything from the 48 hours that followed. I remember I got in my office, cleared my schedule for the day, and just to support students in the way that I could. And I remember this student Ms. RA came into my office and sat down in the chair in front of me, looked at me, and just started crying. And if you knew this already, this would be very out of the ordinary, but obviously in the context, it makes a little bit of sense. But we talked about a lot. We only had about a 5 or 10 minute conversation. And I remember her leaving very vividly, oddly enough. She stood up, and I looked at her in the eyes, and I said, what do you need from me? Anyone else in this room use this phrase? Yes, all right. And to be honest with you, the moment she left my office, I was honestly embarrassed. And I was embarrassed because I use this phrase about 500 to 600 times a semester. Because it's a very easy thing to end of like, a conduct meeting, a one-on-one. I probably ended my coffee conversation the other day with someone with that. It's really easy to end the conversation that way. As I kept thinking about examples, I realized that what do you need from me has become the new how are you in student affairs. In other words, a question that we ask and are either not willing to or ready to accept the answer. I mean, if you're like me and you're walking across campus and you see someone you know, you're like, hey, how are you? I can't tell you what they said back to me. And I can't remember a lot of times when I say to those students what they're going to say back to me. And so I kept thinking about this and thinking about all the times that I did it. And I dug into literature, and I think what was clear was that asking students, what do you need from me, assumes that they have a high level of self-advocacy or grit, if you've read Angela Lee Duckworth's book, and are able to answer this question in the absence of many social dynamics at play at university. Think about it. We're asking a student to list the 15 different ways that we can help them without providing them a context to be able to do that. So I thought back to my Starbucks training. Being genuine means being able to connect, discover, then respond. In the context of our work, it's connecting with the students on a human level, discovering what they may need, and responding with the things that you are willing to do with them. I've stopped ending my interactions with, what do you need from me? Or I've at least tried, I still do it. But I started listing all the ways that I can support them, and you would not be surprised the amount of students that want to take me up on my offer to call their advisor and ask a question about an academic policy, walk over to the counseling center, or just email their professor and say, hey, I'm aware the student was out of the class today and I want to give you some context. We have to stop waiting for our students to come talk to us. We have to strategically set ourselves up to be a source of support and guidance for the students. But don't get me wrong. Changing my approach in that situation wouldn't have changed the situation with the student. But I think back to the Starbucks mission statement. We create inspired moments in each student's day. Customers, but now it's students. What's more inspiring than someone who's gotten to know you and what you need? Now, I think back about the situation a lot, and I think back to my training at Starbucks in that way as well. And I think that the message has become clear that using that, what do you need from me? We really need to be setting ourselves up for that support and guidance. And I think more about Starbucks in the way that we treated our customers. And in a time where student affairs is given more responsibility than ever before in the retention efforts of our students, we have to make retention personal. That's how Starbucks retains its customers, and I think we have a lot to learn from that. They give us an apron at Starbucks for a reason. Things get messy. I used to think the messier my apron, the more I accomplish in a day. And I can't tell you the amount of times I've wanted to go home or put on my Starbucks apron to absorb the messy parts of my role, go home, throw it in the washing machine, and then come out clean on the other side. And to close this talk, I want you all to think about, on the next day of work after this weather storm that we're dealing with, going home and putting on your Starbucks apron. Your student affairs apron. What would it look like? What would be stitched on the back? And what would you expect it to look like at the end of the day? I hope we in this room are not afraid to get our aprons messy. And let's make the commitment to create inspired moments in our students' day. Thank you.